Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, rejected former US President Donald Trump's offer to engage in new nuclear talks. Khamenei dismissed the offer as a charade, a thinly veiled attempt to impose Washington's will on Tehran. His rejection underscores the deep-seated mistrust that has characterized US-Iran relations for decades. Khamenei's blunt statement sent a clear message. Iran will not be bullied into submission. The supreme leader's words signaled a hardening of Tehran's stance, casting a shadow over hopes for a diplomatic resolution. Former President Trump's approach to Iran combined aggressive rhetoric with diplomatic and military tools. His administration believed that a show of strength was necessary to bring Iran to the negotiating table. Trump's maximum pressure strategy aimed to cripple Iran's economy and force its leaders back to the negotiating table. This strategy involved severe economic sanctions that targeted key sectors of Iran's economy, including oil exports, banking, and trade. While sanctions inflicted pain on Iran's economy, they also fueled anti-American sentiment and strengthened hardliners. The Iranian public, already suffering from economic hardships, often blamed the United States for their plight, leading to increased anti-American demonstrations. Trump's withdrawal from the 2015 nuclear deal was criticized by U.S. allies as a setback for non-proliferation efforts. European leaders in particular were vocal about their concerns, arguing that the deal was the best way to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons. The assassination of Qasem Soleimani in January 2020 demonstrated Trump's willingness to take aggressive action. Soleimani, a top Iranian general, was seen as a key figure in Iran's military operations across the Middle East. This move risked sparking a wider conflict, highlighting the volatility of his Iran policy. The assassination led to a significant escalation in tensions between the U.S. and Iran, with both sides exchanging threats and military actions. The Trump administration's maximum pressure campaign aimed to squeeze Iran's economy and force concessions on its nuclear program. This involved crippling sanctions, diplomatic isolation, and military threats. The reimposition of U.S. sanctions devastated Iran's economy, causing the rial to plummet, inflation to soar, and unemployment to rise. Sanctions made it difficult for Iran to sell its oil, a major revenue source. The Trump administration argued the sanctions targeted the government, but ordinary Iranians bore the brunt of the economic pain. The campaign's impact on the Iranian populace has been severe, fueling further tensions. In response to U.S. pressure, Iran has adopted a strategy of defiance. Tehran has gradually exceeded the limits on its nuclear program imposed by the 2015 nuclear deal. Iran argues it is entitled to these steps due to the U.S. withdrawal from the agreement. While Iran maintains its nuclear program is for peaceful purposes, its actions have raised international concerns. Beyond the nuclear realm, Iran has demonstrated its regional strength by supporting allies and proxies in Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. Iran's actions, including attacks on oil tankers, have raised tensions with the United States. Despite escalating tensions, there have been occasional glimmers of hope for a diplomatic solution. The international community has been closely monitoring the situation, hoping for any sign of progress. Diplomatic channels have remained open, albeit strained, as both sides navigate a complex web of geopolitical interests. In August 2024, Ayatollah Khamenei indicated he might be open to talks with the United States under certain conditions. This announcement came as a surprise to many, given the supreme leader who historically hardline stance against the West. Khamenei's statement represented a subtle shift in tone from Tehran. It suggested a potential willingness to engage in dialogue, albeit cautiously. Analysts believe this shift could be a strategic move to alleviate some of the economic pressures Iran has been facing. The supreme leader's willingness to entertain dialogue was seen as a sign that Iran felt the pressure of US sanctions. These sanctions have significantly impacted the Iranian economy, leading to widespread discontent among the population. However, Khamenei made it clear that Iran would only negotiate if the US lifted sanctions and returned to the 2015 nuclear deal. This condition underscores the deep mistrust between the two nations and the challenges that lie ahead in any potential negotiations. These conditions were seen by many in Washington as non-starters, dampening hopes for a breakthrough. The path to reconciliation remains fraught with obstacles, but the mere possibility of dialogue offers a glimmer of hope in an otherwise tense and uncertain landscape. The escalating US-Iran tensions have alarmed the international community. Several countries and organizations have offered to mediate to prevent the situation from spiraling out of control. Russia, with close ties to Iran, has emerged as a potential mediator, offering to host talks. However, Russia's motives are complex, potentially advancing its own geopolitical interests. The United Nations has urged both sides to exercise restraint and return to negotiations. The UN's nuclear watchdog warned that time is running out to salvage the 2015 nuclear deal. The international community remains deeply concerned about the potential for conflict. At the heart of the US-Iran standoff is Iran's nuclear program. Tehran maintains its nuclear program is for peaceful purposes, but the US and its allies suspect otherwise. Iran's history of concealing aspects of its nuclear program has fueled these suspicions. Efforts to acquire sensitive nuclear technology and develop ballistic missiles have further raised concerns. The 2015 nuclear deal aimed to address these issues with strict limits and inspections. The Trump administration's withdrawal from the deal has undermined these efforts, raising the specter of a nuclear-armed Iran. The possibility of a military conflict between the US and Iran has loomed large for decades. Both the US and Israel have declared they will not allow Iran to acquire nuclear weapons. The Trump administration's maximum pressure campaign aimed to coerce Iran, but also raised the risk of conflict. The assassination of Qasem Soleimani in January 2020 highlighted the fragility of the situation. The strike underscored the ever-present danger of miscalculation and unintended escalation. The current impasse between the US and Iran is the product of decades of mutual suspicion and animosity. The 1979 Iranian Revolution and the subsequent hostage crisis poisoned relations for decades. The Iran-Iraq War of the 1980s, with US support for Iraq, further deepened the divide. These events continue to shape perceptions and fuel distrust on both sides. The US views Iran as a rogue state and a sponsor of terrorism. Iran sees the US as an imperialist power bent on undermining its sovereignty. The road ahead for US-Iran relations remains fraught with peril. Decades of mistrust and conflict have created a complex web of geopolitical tensions that are difficult to unravel. Both nations have their own strategic interests and domestic pressures that complicate the path to reconciliation. The Trump administration's maximum pressure campaign pushed Iran further down the path of nuclear defiance. Sanctions crippled the Iranian economy, but also fueled nationalist sentiments and hardened Tehran's resolve to continue its nuclear program. The policy aimed to bring Iran to the negotiating table, but instead, it escalated tensions. The Biden administration has signaled a willingness to re-engage diplomatically, but faces an uphill battle. Rebuilding trust is no easy task, and the political landscape in both countries is fraught with challenges. The administration must navigate a delicate balance between showing strength and offering concessions. Iran insists the U.S. must lift sanctions and return to the 2015 nuclear deal before talks can take place. The 2015 agreement, known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, was a landmark deal that aimed to curb Iran's nuclear ambitions in exchange for economic relief. However, its future remains uncertain. A nuclear-armed Iran would have profound implications, potentially triggering a regional arms race. Neighboring countries might feel compelled to develop their own nuclear capabilities, leading to increased instability and the risk of nuclear proliferation in an already volatile region. Conversely, a military conflict would be devastating and destabilize the region. The human cost would be immense, with countless lives lost and millions displaced. The economic and social repercussions would be felt far beyond the Middle East, affecting global markets and international relations. Dialogue and diplomacy offer the only viable path to a peaceful resolution, avoiding catastrophic conflict. It is imperative for the international community to support efforts that promote understanding and cooperation, ensuring that the precipice of nuclear brinkmanship is navigated with caution and wisdom.